You're on.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. We are actually on a doorstep of a historic moment. We are facing something that we have never seen before, or for a matter of fact, never has anyone seen in history. There isn't a single event, but more of a condition or a situation that is starting to unfold, and it's getting bigger every day. Sorry. It will affect everyone in the room, and it has dramatic implications for the entire nation over the next 30 to 50 years. As a nation and individuals, we are radically unprepared for it, and we have no experience in dealing with it. You're probably wondering what I am talking about. What I am talking about is retirement. I'm talking about the largest generation of people born anywhere in this planet's history to retire. And you may be thinking, well, retirement's nothing new, and you would be right. Sorry, I'm having a technical problem. There we go. But this is the first time we've had almost 70 million retirees retiring at the same time. In fact, there are going to be more people retiring in the next 15 years than have ever retired in the cumulative history of our country. In fact, if you study demographics, you'll see that up until now, retirement has been rare. In fact, when Roosevelt introduced the Social Security Act, he set the retirement age at 65. But guess what? At that time, the retirement age, or the average lifespan, was 62. They never really expected any significant number of people to need Social Security, let alone 70 million. No one is ready for this. Social Security and Medicare, the funding, they're getting more deeply underfunded every day we wait. And the vast majority of Americans have not saved enough for retirement. I'm not saying this to scare you, but I'm saying this for someone who has to tell you the truth. And this is why we are here, to give you some tactics, some tools, some strategies that will help you control your future. There's also another issue. Let me ask you, what is this? No, that's not it. What is this? What this is your entire retirement nest egg. This is everything. Every dime, everything you scrimped and saved and sacrificed and done away with and put aside for the last 30 to 40 years. It's your IRAs, it's your 401ks, it's your pension, it's everything you have. And this has to last you another 30 to 40 years in retirement. Except Uncle Sam wants his piece. Oh, and Medicare wants their piece. And kids coming home, they want their piece now. So that leaves you with this. Are you happy with this? I didn't think so. And that's the other reason we are here today. And my name is John Krajnik. In your folder that's on your desk, you should see an evaluation form. We'll talk about this later. So how do you envision your retirement? Many people envision it as favorite hobby, golfing, going to the country club. Some people say it's world travel, taking a cruise, visiting the places that they've always wanted to see. But what's your vision? Retirement can be a wonderful thing, and it can be a chance to explore your dreams and your realities. And it can be a very fantastic time if you plan for it. It's the beginning of a new voyage. It's changing times. The investment decisions and the savings decisions you made to accumulate for retirement will bring you into this crossroads. Now, the decisions you make to live off these funds and manage your assets will determine the retirement lifestyle you enjoy. Will your hard-earned money last a lifetime? Which direction will you take? Where will you start? So what happens when you retire? Well, the rules are different. If you die at 65, it won't really matter. But if you live to 85, or if you live even to 100, then the decisions you make today will be key on how your retirement will unfold. Planning will really matter. One of my best clients got an early retirement package after working for GE for 35 years, and he never looked back. He's currently 85, 86, still drives, and thoroughly enjoyed never working another day in his life. Needless to say, how you handle something or something that needs to be customized for you, and we can help you with this. So you need to have the importance of generating income and making the most of your money, and you need to protect your income and asset, and probably for many years. Longevity is probably the biggest challenge we have. You know, most people are preparing for retirement and they think of the average age of a male in the United States lives to 78, and the average age of a female is 72. But the problem with those numbers is they include infant mortality, which is significantly lowers life expectancy. And frankly, we don't have, at your age, we don't have to worry about you dying from an infant disease. So the average expectation for 65 years old is where we need to look. If you take a look at this, man has a chance to live, a 54% chance to live to age 85. So it's better, more likely than not, he's going to live to 85, not 72. And there's still a 35% chance that he may live to 90. With women, there's a 65% chance of living to 85 and almost a 50% chance to live to 90. Actually, if you take both your lives together, there's a 60% chance one of you will live to age 90. Because one of you is probably going to live to age 90, planning is critical. So there's 5 action steps that we can do to chart your course. And here are the 5. And the first one of these 5 is size up the current situation and the sources of income. You'll probably need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to live comfortably in retirement. And you also need to account for inflation. Well, why so much? Well, do you want to downsize your house or give up any of your club memberships or philanthropic interests? Do you really want to change your lifestyle in the ways you enjoy? And also, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is healthcare. If you're fortunate enough to have health insurance in retirement, your current employer still may not continue it. My client I told you about earlier, the person who worked at GE, well, GE stopped paying for his health benefits a couple of years ago. But in addition to the 800-pound gorilla, there's also a 1,000-pound gorilla that we will talk about later. One of them is the impacts of inflation, and this assumes a 4% inflation rate. And what we have to do is we have to see, you have this pot of money, but inflation makes its buying power go down year after year. Let's make it simple and take a look at this. Say we start with today, you have $1 million portfolio, and we assume that there's no growth. Now that $1 million portfolio 5 years from now will have a buying power of $820,000. So you can buy $820,000 in today's stuff with that $1 million. If you go out to 10 years, buying power is cut by over 30%. 15 years, we're getting close to half. And in 20 years, your buying power is half of what it is today. You know, just some examples of this, just to kind of put it in real world terms. If we go back to 1998, a little over 20 years ago, average car cost a little over $20,000. Today it's approaching $36,000. Average price of a candy bar in '98 was 70 cents. Today it's $1.50. Eggs carton was $1.05. Today it's $1.60. Gallon of gas back then was $1.06, and today it's averaging around $2.80. You can see the picture. So you have, looking at your primary sources of income in retirement, you got 4 basic primary sources. One is what you've saved up. The other is Social Security. You could also work part-time in retirement. And if you're fortunate enough, you may still have a pension where you get paid a pension in retirement. So let's imagine these 4 sources as buckets, and we're going to basically put these 4 buckets up. One is a pension, one is part-time work, one is Social Security, and the last one is investments. Now if we look at the pensions are kind of like unicorns. You know, in 1980, 60% of US companies offered a pension. Today it's down below 4%. So nearly over every company in America has switched from a pension to what's called a 401k, or a defined benefit plan, from or defined contribution plan, which was a defined benefit plan. So how many of you in the audience have a pension? Well, I'm also one of those rare unicorns. I do have a pension actually from my first job, but I'm the youngest person I know who has a pension these days. So what about working in retirement? A lot of people expect to work in retirement. Actually, the statistics say almost 80% say that they are. But in reality, less than 30% actually do. You know, you get an example of one person who wanted to work in retirement, and he worked locally at Firestone, aka Bridgestone. And then he retired, and he decided he wanted to get a job, and he didn't really need the money, he just wanted to work. But he ended up with COPD from working around all those chemicals and rubber compounds all those years, and honestly, every time he's tried to work, he ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. So employment can be challenging, and physically you may not be able to. You may not be able to find a job that you actually enjoy. And as this one example, this person who had these health problems, he actually couldn't work. So making employment as a large part of your retirement plan probably isn't the best strategy. And as actually you can see, most people think they are going to work, but in reality, most don't. So we're going to eliminate the pension. That leaves us with, and we're going to eliminate the working in retirement. So that leaves us with Social Security and investments. Social Security is partially under your control because you have control of when you're going to take it, and there are several questions you got to consider when you're going to make that decision. You have great control over your investments, so that will be our main focus here. Social Security. Full retirement is age 66 or 67, depending on your year, and you're entitled to 100% of your benefit. A lot of people, for a lot of reasons, say that they're going to take it early at 62. But if you do take it early, your monthly benefit will be reduced to 75 or 70% of full benefit, depending on when you were born. And then if you wait to age 70, you actually get 32% more. Your benefit would be 132% of taking at your full retirement age. And there's some tax planning that you can do that can make this work even better. Here's a graphical view of the effect of taking it early and later at different ages than what the spouse would get taking at different ages. As you can see, if you take your benefit early, you can get paid significantly different than if you take it later. Now, remember how we talked about earlier the average age that people actually live when they hit 65? And it was very easy for people to live to age 85, and it was likely one of you would live to 90. And this is a nice graph to show you on the advantages of delaying to 65, or delaying to even 70. If you take a look there, and these are the total amounts here on the side that you would get out of the system by taking it, starting at different ages. And if you take it at 62, the average person would get $500,000 out of the system before they hit age 90. Whereas if you waited to age 70, you'd actually get almost $130,000 more, $129,000 more based on the statistics. So it really depends on how long you live, and unless you have really good reasons why you think your life expectancy is going to be lower, there's a very good chance that waiting will help. But that's an individual question, and we'll discuss that more when we have a one-on-one meeting. So that leaves us with the investment bucket. And with that, we would like to ask a few key questions. Question 1 is, how much is in the bucket? That includes everything, all you have saved. It has a good sense. It could be even illiquid investments like your house, depending on what you were going to do with it. It could be used as an income stream. You could sell it and downsize it. There's things called reverse mortgages. Then you need to ask how much is deferred, fully taxable or never taxed. Now, is it safe and growing? And how much income can I take out each year? And how long will my money last? So these are the basic questions, and how you approach that is based on what you need, what you have, and what you want to do. So in personal savings investment, there's basically two general categories. There's tax deferred, which are employer-sponsored plans like 401ks and 403bs, IRAs, and annuities. Then there's taxable, stuff you have in your regular account, stocks, bonds, cash alternatives, and mutual funds. But in reality, there's even a third bucket. Excuse me, flip that too far. And we'll discuss that third bucket later. So understand the distribution rules. There's the age 59.5 rule. So if you take money out of an IRA or a 401k earlier than age 59.5, there's actually a 10% penalty added on top of the taxes you already owe. There are some exceptions to this. There's a way of getting money out of a 401k if you are separated from your job at age 55 or older. And then if you have qualified medical expenses, certain higher education expenses, and a first-time home purchase can actually create will eliminate the 10% penalty. And there's also something called a 72T where you can take it out earlier. And that one, let's just skip this. Now, the other thing is at age 70.5, there's a thing called retired minimum distributions, where at age 70.5, you don't get penalized for taking it out early, you actually get penalized for not taking it out. And that can be a 50% penalty on the amount you need to take out. It's one of the harshest punitive penalties in the whole tax code. Now, this is where we start talking about that third bucket, that third form, which is the never tax form. One of them is a Roth IRA. And a Roth IRA is where you pay the taxes up front, and any earnings that you make is without tax when you take it out. One other nice thing is that 70.5 rule where you have to take the money out. Well, there's no requirements to take the money out during your life with one of these. Since you've already paid the taxes, the gains are intaxable. Now there is an income eligibility to make contributions. Another one is a LIRP. Now, LERP has tax-free qualified distributions. Again, there's no required distributions like a Roth. Now, there's no income eligibility on this. You could be making $1 a year, you could be making $2 million a year. This is available to you. It can also be used for long-term care. And its unique structure can actually make the performance significantly better than a Roth. And also, on top of all of that, the tax transfer to the next generation is also extremely favored. One of the things is, do not forget to name the beneficiaries on your account. Any accounts you have some form of beneficiaries. You can change the beneficiaries at any time. You can choose primary and contingent beneficiaries. You can use a trust document to handle your beneficiary designations for all your accounts. Just make sure you keep it in order. You know, one example that is given where someone forgot to change the beneficiaries on their 401k at a former employer, and they got a divorce. Well, they had their ex-spouse as their primary beneficiary on that paperwork. They of course changed it in other accounts, but they had forgotten about that beneficiary was not changed. So, case went, and the ex-wife decided she wanted the money. The case went to court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed with her. Even though there was a trust in place, because the beneficiary on this account went to her, the courts decided that that was the primary reason the money went through. So, essentially the money, in the case of this guy, actually ended up supporting his ex-wife and her kids from a second marriage. So, it's very important to go over this, and it's something we do right away when you become a client. So the next course is develop an investment strategy. Now, this is one of my expertise, and I could talk endlessly on this. And all the sections in this do seem important. But one of the things we need is an asset allocation, a concept you're all probably familiar with, which is asset allocation. As stated on a previous slide, it's that systematic approach to diversification that determines an efficient mix of assets. And there's a lot of ways we can look at diversification. You know, example, you have these are samples, and they're only hypothetical, but sample for a conservative investment. They have high level of bonds, relatively low levels of stocks, and cash alternatives. For someone who's aggressive, they'd have larger portions of stocks, lower bonds, and lower cash alternatives. But that leads into something else that you have to understand, and this is very important when you are attempting to understand the dynamics of the difference of distribution versus accumulation, and that's the sequence of returns. When your money performs, when you're taking money away from it, can be as important as how well your money performs. In pre-retirement, it really doesn't matter. That's called the accumulation phase. In retirement, it can be very, very dangerous. And that's called the distribution phase. Let me show you an example. So we're going to start with the pre-retirement, or that accumulation phase. I'm going to start with a $100,000 portfolio. And we're going to take a look at it over 5 years. And we're going to just put a average compound rate of 2.7%. And we're just going to look at different rates of return. So we're going to start off in year 1 at plus 40, year 2 plus 20, and so on and so on. So, in year 1, at the end of the year, if you started at $140,000 and you had a 40% return, you had $140,000. Year 2, with another 20%, you had $168,000. Year 3, you still had $168,000. Your advisor's looking like a hero at this point, but the reality is the market it doesn't go straight up. In year 3, we had a bad year of down 142. In year 5, you had a particularly bad year where you're down 114. Now, let's just simply take those and reverse the sequence and have the bad years first. And if you take a look at that, down 20, you're at 80. Down 15, you're at 68. 0, you're at 68. Plus 20, you're at 81. And plus 40, you're at 114. And if you take a look at these two numbers, they're identical. So the sequence of returns in this case did not matter. So you end up at the same place. Now, of course, you could emotionally do something in there, but that's why you have advisors. If you stay the course and stay with your plan, you end up in the same place no matter which way the funds go up or down. But when you start taking income, things start changing. So now, what we're going to do, something happened here with the slide. Okay, I'm going to have to fix the animation on this, but okay. So year one, 40%, we had 140. And then we took a $6,000 income, so we ended up with $134,000. Year two, we had the 20%, and then we ended up with $160,800, and took the $6,000 of income, and we ended up with $154,000. Year three, doing the same thing, we ended up with $148,000. Year four, with the minus 15, we ended up with $120,480, and then year five, we ended up at $96,384. We had a total of $90,384. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to reverse the order of sequence. And year one, we took 20% out, and then we had $80,000 in income. And then we took $6,000 out, and we had $74,000. Year two, we took that $74,000 and reduced it by 15%, and ended up with $62,900. And then took $6,000 of income, our account went down to $56,900. Year three, we went to 0% down to $56,900 and went to $6,000 in income, and we had a remainder of $50,900. Then in year four, we're up 20%, so we got a little better. We went up to $61,800, but still removed the $6,000 in income and ended up at $55,000. And then year five, we were up to 77, took the 6,000 out, and we ended up with 71,000. You compare these two, all we did was flip the returns, but if you take a look, at the end of those 5 years, instead of having 90,000 left, we were left with 71,000. And then ask yourself this, in year three, if you had half of your money gone, how would you feel at that point? So investing for a long retirement. So one strategy is to consider seeking future growth by dividing your portfolio into different buckets. So you'd have a conservative, a moderate, and a more aggressive portfolio. So if you take a look at this $500,000 portfolio, and we put up these three buckets, the first one is your intermediate income bucket, or what you actually spend off now. And we put $120,000 in that. So we put it in like a fixed income that pays $24,000 of annual income a year for 5 years. Then we put together a bucket two with conservative growth. We put $100,000 in that, and we target about 4% per year, or 4,000 per year annual growth rate. And then we put the rest of the bucket, the $280,000 that's left, in a moderate growth bucket at 6% per year annual rate. So by dividing it up into these three buckets, you use bucket one first. So you're expecting it to pay you $25,000 a year, and at the end of 5 years, that bucket is depleted. So the total income for 5 years is $127,500. Now if we do bucket 2, it's growing conservatively at an average growth of 4% a year. So after 5 years, this bucket's worth $121,000, almost $122,000. Now what you do is you can take that money, and what do you think we do with this money? We take it back and we use it to refill bucket 1. So then you get your $25,000, nearly $26,000 a year in the bucket every year to use for your expenses. So now, where are we now? Well, we had bucket 1, we spent it down. Bucket 2 grew for 5 years. Then we put it into bucket 1 and spent it down. But then what happened to bucket 3? Well, bucket 3, where we put the $280,000 over the 10 years, grew back up to a little over the $500,000 that you started with. So what we do is we take the now larger bucket 3 and we refill bucket 1 and bucket 2 and repeat the process. Now, there are many things that, this is very important in retirement, and there are many things that we can use to produce income in retirement. You know, bonds. They're a long-term IRU. They provide regular fixed income, and the principal is repaid at the end of the contract. The two risks for these are interest rate risk. If interest rates go up or go down, that can affect the price of the bonds. And of course, default risk. Who you're borrowing the money, who you're loaning the money to, do they have the ability to pay it back? There should be strategies to actually manage these. Income mutual funds can be used for that, and they're mutual funds that have stocks and bonds and things that pay high amounts of dividends. And they're easy to get into, relatively inexpensive, but they also have market risk, and the income can fluctuate based on how the companies that you're investing in are doing. Boards can raise your income, they can also lower your income. Famous one recently that lowered was GE. GE dropped their income producing vehicle quite dramatically lately. Some have increased. So dividend paying stocks, you know, profits decrease, the dividend could be cut, the value will fluctuate with market conditions. Some of these things, LERPs REITs are kind of one of the more famous ones where they, for tax advantages, they distribute high amounts of their earnings per year. But then another one is annuities. They're insurance based, they have a competitive rate return. A lot of them can get tax deferred accumulation. There's no contribution limits or mandatory distribution. Market participation is possible. And there are options for guaranteed income over life. Let's pause for a second and let's take a look at the Thompsons. They're 65 years old. Let's say they have $700,000 in a retirement portfolio in employer stock and CDs. They're concerned about